Welcome to a Knitting Pipeline Extra. This is number 25, and we have a snowy day here in Illinois. It snowed Sunday night. It's Tuesday now. It snowed Sunday night, and then it's just lightly snowing today. It's beautiful outside. It has been a long time since I put out a video episode. I should have introduced myself first. I'm Paula from the Knitting Pipeline audio podcast. And I like to do these video summaries now and then. And in these, I also include other crafts that I do, which mainly are quilting, well, and then some needle felting, punch needle now, and wool applique, embroidery, whatever I get into. So there's so much to do because the last episode was when my sister was here. My hair looked a little wonky there. I can't really see very well. I'm getting new glasses too, so the glare should be better. These are supposed to be non-glare, but I think it wore off by now, and so the new glasses are ready, but I haven't had a chance to go get them. Anyway, I'm Paula. I'm PrairiePiper on Ravelry, and I live in Central Illinois. You can also find me on Instagram as Knitting Pipeline. I've been really bad about posting on Instagram, and I always say I'm going to get better, and then I don't, but that's the way it is. But thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you enjoy the episode. The order of things, and I will put the timestamp down below, so in the event that you do not care for the other crafts, you can stay for the knitting or you can move ahead to the others. It's up to you. So knitting, a lot of the knitting things have gone. I don't have the actual items, but last time I showed you the Odette hoodies that I made for my granddaughters who are 3 and 1 years old. And we were supposed to go in September to a family gathering. We had rented a big lake house and we didn't get to go because of Hurricane Florence. And then we rescheduled it, got all new airline tickets and everything. And then Hurricane Matthew, I can't remember, whatever it was, Matthew, I think, came in. And yeah, we just went anyway. It was quite a harrowing experience, but therefore, they got their sweaters later than anticipated, but that's okay. They didn't really need them. I got some great photos of them in their Odette hoodies, so I will put those in here at this point and you can see them. I also wanted to share that I made wool labels for the inside of the sweaters, and I don't think, actually I only made it for our youngest granddaughter because I had printed labels for the older one, but I haven't gotten around to that. And now I actually like doing the wool labels better. So I might do I've written down how I make the wool labels, and I think it'll be a blog post. Maybe I'll do a little video episode to kind of show you, but I don't have a good setup for photographing. I don't know how they do it, photographing from above so that you can see what someone is doing, but I can show you step by step, and I'll put in some of those photos of the labels so you can see those. I'm using my laptop for the notes today, so I'll keep looking over to the side on that. So the sweaters fit, they were a great fit, and our older granddaughter, Helene, who's 3, she wore hers quite a bit when we were there. And also the leaf top baby hat by Susan B. Anderson. I made one for each of the girls. And I got Helene in hers, but Maeve, she didn't like having a hat on. So she kept pulling it off. Let's see, I've also made 2 pair of arched gusset mittens. I don't believe I've shown those to you. My button keeps clattering here on the table. I don't believe I've shown those to you, but that is a free pattern by Purl Soho. I highly recommend it. It's fun. It has it's called arched gusset because the increases for the thumb gusset follow this arch lifeline on a hand, pretty much. And it was great fun to knit, and I made 2 pair for the knitting pipeline Maine Retreat that went to mittens for the Maine Mitten project, it's called. And then I made mittens for the Eagle Crest Retreat, and on that one, the first one I used a pattern from the Mitten Handbook. I'll insert those photos in here. The second one is my own pattern that I've kind of devised and thought maybe I'd put out at some point. I don't think I will because there's so many mitten patterns and books out there, but we'll see. I think I also showed you the Norwegian fur top-down baby cardigan. I'm not going to repeat that. But my next project was the Indigo Frost by Isabel Kraemer. This is a pattern that for a smallish poncho, I just have already enjoyed wearing this so much. I used Quince & Company Lark in the Iceland colorway. And then for the stranded work, it's actually not stranded work, it's slip stitch. I used pomegranate, storm, and dogwood, and egret. Egret is the natural color. One thing I really like about this is that there's shaping in the back of the neck, so it comes up. And it's just a nice size. I think I took this with me when we went to North Carolina / Virginia. And it doesn't look real good with this green, but I have to kind of bend down and show you. There's this eyelet pattern here. It just kind of hits at a nice spot right about above your wrist length. You could make it longer, of course, if you want, but I love the size of it. It's not too bulky, and I've already worn it quite a bit. There's no pilling on it either. It's really a lovely piece, and I want to make another one. I think there are people that I could make them for too. So that is called Indigo Frost by Isabel Kraemer. I made no modifications on that, and as I said, if you're, oh yeah, I did, sorry, it's supposed to have a turtleneck. It's supposed to have a turtleneck, and I like the looks of turtlenecks, but just, I don't like things up against my neck. I don't know, feels like I'm choking or something, even though it's not tight. So what I did was I just started it here and just did an inch or so of the ribbing, and it would have been out about this far. And then I went down and did everything as it said in the pattern. Once you get the eyelet pattern set, you can see where the eyelets are supposed to go, so you don't have to pay a whole lot of attention there. And it's just a lovely piece to wear. The other thing I have is another Close to You. This is by Justyna Lorkowska. It is an asymmetrical shawl / scarf, and I find this size very wearable. You can wrap it around, and this is the second one I've made. I made one out of Leading Men Fiber Arts in the Cherry Blossom colorway. This is Diabolical mini skein set, and it was called Gasoline something. It's in my project notes. This is a free pattern by Justyna Lorkowska, and it starts with a few stitches at one end, and then you keep increasing. Meanwhile, you're doing this lovely border pattern. This is knitted as you go. It's so simple. There's only one row that you have to keep track of on the stitches. And stitch count is not that critical except on that row you need to make sure you have the right number when you start that. But if you mess up elsewhere, it doesn't really matter. It's perfect for travel or retreat knitting. I use the magic knot to join the mini skeins, and you can finish off, you can use all of your yarn. It has a picot bind off too. I don't know if you can see that here. I've worn it quite a bit. These aren't colors I normally wear, but they just look so fall, perfect for fall. The blue picks up when I wear a denim jacket. It looks good, so I've enjoyed it. That's Close to You by Justina Lorkowska. And then I made these socks for myself. This is also Dyabolical, and it's self-striping. I cannot remember the name of the colorway, but it's in my project pages. And then the toes and heels, it was kind of a spontaneous thing. I didn't think of it up here. I did a contrasting heel and toe. Someone just recently asked in the Ravelry group how you do a contrasting heel on with a traditional gusset. You just change your yarn here at the heel, at the top of the heel flap, and then knit everything as usual, do the heel turn, and then pick up in the yarn that you were, the main color, you pick it up. So it's not difficult at all, and I used Kate Atherley's basic rib sock, which is a 3-in-1 rib. I don't know if you can see the ribbing there. And these are my socks. I haven't worn them yet because I had them on the blockers to show you. Let me check my list. That's probably it. I have another large project going on with a lot of knitting in it, and I'll be showing you that next time. It's the Rodeo Dried Poncho, and that is a Christmas gift. I think I'm ready to move on to some of the other crafts already. And if you're interested in the knitting that I've showed and you have not listened to the audio, I go into more detail on the audio as far as details on the knitting and modifications and things like that. And I do have pretty good project notes on Ravelry as well. Okay, so I'm going to regroup and get ready for the other the other crafts here. Before I go on to quilting, I forgot something. These were mittens that were sent to me by Jane. She's Prairie Poet. They're a classic mitten with a cable. I've had them in my video box here for things to show on the video since probably September or maybe earlier. I just love them. They have this cable down there. Thank you so much to Jane and everyone else who was going, people who went to the Knitting Pipeline Maine Retreats. And then I forgot to talk about the Leslie Wind workshop and at the Maine Retreat. There's so much that's gone on since I last recorded that I just figured I'm going to miss some things. But I do want to talk briefly about that. Leslie Wind is a jewelry designer, and she did our workshop at the Maine Retreat. And we made things, we were hammering, and this is what I made. It's a pendant. I don't know if you can see it. I'll maybe get a photo of it. Maybe. Well, anyway, it doesn't show up very well. It started out being maybe a cable needle, but I don't usually use cable needles. I just do it without a cable. But I ended up making something that sort of resembles a treble clef sign. It's just, and then this piece could be used for if I wanted to do Portuguese knitting and have the hook or the clip. And then it's just on a string. Leslie is an amazing teacher. She just brings out creativity in people. I'm trying to put this down where it's not going to make a loud noise, and that is hard. Okay. And then when I knit the pair of mittens from the Mitten book, this was all the yarn I had left. I just threw it in the box here so you could see. It's just very little. I totally played yarn chicken on all of it. Okay, we're 15 minutes in. Let's see if okay, I'm going to talk briefly about punch needle because that was our other workshop at the Knitting Pipeline Maine Retreat. We went to Camp Wool in Kennebunk, which is in a magnificent store. They don't carry knitting yarn, but they carry all kinds of like rug hooking, wool applique, and then they have antiques and punch needle, cross stitch, all kinds of stuff. So our instructor, Donna Bayliss, came up with a pattern. Since we knit mittens for the Maine Mitten project, she came up with a mitten design. And this is the one I did. It is, it's a blueberry pattern. Punch needle is like a cousin, I think, to rug hooking. I've never done that, but my sister Gayle does, and she did a lot at one time, not so much anymore, but with punch needle, of course, it's a lot smaller, generally speaking, and you're punching on the wrong side of the work, which I think rug hooking, you're actually punching on the right side of the work. This could have been made into an ornament. I just put some wool felt on the back, cut it to fit. And it was fun. We didn't have all the right equipment at the class because the loom or the stretchers that you normally use, they didn't have one for everybody. So we had embroidery hoops, and it's not the greatest setup. We also didn't have the right fabric in the kit, but nonetheless, we got the idea of it. And I came home and ordered a frame that I could do the actual thing in, and the proper, I ordered a kit. And the kit is, it's called Give Thanks, I believe. I can't even tell you where I got it at the moment, but this is what I did. It's supposed to say Give Thanks down here, and I, against my better judgment, I guess, I thought there wasn't enough contrast to show the Give Thanks, and I should have switched threads. I don't know why the kit gave these colors for it, because you cannot read Give Thanks at all, even when you know it's there. But that's okay. It gets the idea. And I had a ball doing it. I love the process of needle punch. You have this special little needle that you punch in and out. And if you look on YouTube, there are loads of tutorials on it. Unfortunately, there's not anything on Craftsy or Blueprint at this time that I could find. And that reminds me, I am a Craftsy affiliate, so if you go to Craftsy or Blueprint, you go to my blog first, click on the link in the sidebar, and it takes you there. Then I get a little bit of a kickback from your purchases of classes or supplies, so I do appreciate that. And yeah, those are the two that I've done, the blueberry mitt. One thing I did with this is I inserted a piece of cardstock in there. Actually, it feels like cardboard. And before I seamed up this bottom, and I just backed this, and I think they had this in the kit, the black wool. And yeah, I think I'm gonna take my sweater off while I'm talking because the buttons keep clattering. So yeah, I had fun with it, and I'll probably do some more. It really helps when you have the right tools. There's just no doubt about it. Some people got very frustrated in the class because the fabric kept tearing, which it does not do if you have the proper fabric. But anyway, I just decided I'm going to do it with the right things, and I had a good time with it. As you know, I also enjoy wool applique. If you're going to get into something other than knitting and you just want another kind of handwork, wool applique, the learning curve is very short, because really mostly you need blanket stitch and back stitch and maybe a French knot or two. Why am I showing that one? This was the one I wanted to talk about. My sister and I both, after we recorded last time, and by the way, thank you so much for all the great comments. The comments were just wonderful, and Gayle enjoyed them, I enjoyed them, but we didn't record after we went to the quilt show. We were just too we were too busy. We were making some things, but we both bought this kit at the Quilt Corner in Morton. Just looking to see if I missed anything. And it's called Block Garden. So all it has is blanket stitch, French knots, and then these little lazy daisies in the middle. It was super simple to do. I will say, and I might do a separate little thing on wool applique, but just for starters, I generally do not like the fusible way to attach these before you stitch them on. I like gluing them. And there's a glue, it's called Roxanne's Glue Based It or something like that. It's Roxanne's. I got it from Connecting Threads, but I'm sure you can get it anywhere. Roxanne's, I should have brought it up. It's a bottle that has a long, skinny, like what would you call that, dispenser tube, and then a cap that goes on it. And with this skinny tube, you can just get a small amount of glue on there. It doesn't, you don't overdo it. And I just prefer that on the wool to the fusible interfacing. One of the reasons is that when, for example, on this next one, this is the next one I did, it was called Dylan. This is a kit I got at Camp Wool by Rustic Country Handcrafts. Kits for wool applique are a great way to get started. I have lots of wool now, and because I buy it, it looks gorgeous, but actually I do really like the kits because everything is right there. The only thing is I usually change the thread if it's included because I do not like 6-stranded embroidery floss. I prefer the pearl cotton, which comes in little spools. So that's generally what I use. Oh yeah, the reason is that when you're doing the fusible interfacing, you don't layer it as easily. You can't layer it as easily. And it's kind of hard to explain, but it's a little more obvious on the next thing I'm showing. But in this one, I just glued these little things on and then I did the blanket stitch around there. And blanket stitch is easy to do. Gayle and I think that it's kind of hard. I think I've got it now, but sometimes it's hard to get started on it and going around corners. But I think I did a good job on this. And now I think I have it in my head how to do it. So I did the block garden. That was fun. And that's a pretty minimal time investment, really. I mean, probably, I think I started it on a Friday night and finished it on a Saturday morning. It just isn't that time consuming. And then Dylan here was about the same. I made a little bit of modification here. I added the snowflakes. This background was all just plain and I decided it needed some snowflakes. So I looked in my embroidery book and found, I have many, but I found pistol stitch, P-I-S-T-I-L, as in the pistil on a flower. And basically that is just French knots with little stems on them that come together in the center, so it looks like a snowflake, I think. Anyway, I just love him, and I also put the cardboard in this one so that it can stand up in a frame or lean up on the mantle, whatever I want to do with it. And then the next one I did, this one I did not buy as a kit. I just bought the pattern. And I bought that at Camp Wool as well in Kennebunk. I'm sure if you wanted any of these, you could get them on their site or you could call them and they would send you stuff. This one is, so I used my own wool, which I really liked because when I saw it on the kit, I'm glad I had my own because I kind of kicked it up a different notch here on that. And I might have made a few modifications, but again, this wasn't a huge project. So this is like a mat that you would put on a table, or I think they call them candle mats sometimes. So then I took one of the motifs, which is the sheep, right? Is that the sheep? Yeah, the sheep right here. And we had the mug rug swap in Maine. That reminded, Maine and Eagle Crest. That reminds me, I did a little block for my rug mat for Maine, and then I did the sheep motif. I just enlarged it 25% and made a mug rug for the Eagle Crest swap, and it turned out really good, and maybe I can find a photo and drop it in here. I had fun making that. I do love wool applique. I could totally go crazy on it, but I also love quilting, so yeah. Too many things to do. So I'm ready to move into quilting, but before I do, I'm going to answer some of the questions that were on the last video with my sister, because, and there are some knitting questions and some questions that were on previous episodes, but quite honestly, I just haven't had time to get it together for this episode, so I will go back and look at the previous ones. But if you have questions, you can go ahead and ask them again on this episode, and then I'd have it all in one place. But most of those, all of those I did answer underneath on YouTube. And yeah, so in my last episode, the quilting one, I showed the modern baby quilt where I had done some straight line quilting. When I did the straight line quilting, I had some puckering at the bottom. There was too much fabric and I couldn't ease it all in, so there ended up being a little fold. Margaret McFeeters, who is Peggy, and she's a fabulous knitter and quilter, she said, because I asked for advice on this, she said, "Hi Paula and Gayle, enjoyed your episode. You're making some lovely quilts. As for the puckering on the line quilting, I have a couple of suggestions. The reason it happens is because the fabrics feed at a different rate. One thing you can do is use a walking foot to quilt those straight lines. The other thing is to put some straight pins perpendicular to where you are going or where you are doing your lines all along the border. As you come to the pins, it sort of eases the fabric in so you don't have a bunch at the end. The problem is why FAF advertises their IDT system, because it makes the fabric feed at the same rate top and bottom." Sorry if this is too much. No, it wasn't, Peggy. She said she loved the notebook idea. Wish she had done that when she got started. And then Seashore Sharon said, "Both of your quilts are so pretty. Glad you have each other to share your ideas with." A lot of you said similar. "I also had to make a small tuck in the bag I made this week. I think it's impossible to have the outer and inner pieces the exact same size." So what Peggy is saying is normally you put the pins horizontal to the way that you're feeding in. I did use a walking foot, by the way, on that because it was layered with the batting and the backing. But I have noticed that when pins are in the horizontal position, which is the normal way to do it, that I think they slip sometimes. I've had problems with the bottom of the quilt kind of pulling under, and then when I look at it after I've stitched there, it seems that that the bottom piece does not have a 1/4 of an inch seam. It has less than that, and then I have to go back and restitch. And you know how, isn't it frustrating when you go back and restitch and then the needle wants to go exactly where you stitched before? It's really hard to get it to move over without taking it out. And I try to not take it out because sometimes that damages the fabric when it's near the edge. But anyway, I will try that, Peggy, to put those pins in perpendicular to the fabric edge and see if that helps. So thank you so much for answering that. And then we had a question from Jane Clem. She said she bought the kit for the felt animals and she wants to upgrade the felt to wool felt, and she asked for sources. So I answered her, so hopefully, Jane, you're on your way with the felt animals. But I said, I have a couple of shops that I favorited on Etsy. If you go on Etsy and look for wool felt, you'll find loads of shops that sell it. I had marked Christmas Keepsakes and Bear Dance Crafts, B-E-A-R Dance Crafts. But I haven't ordered from either of those. Now, Camp Wool and Kennebunk is where I've gotten most of my wool, and the Quilt Corner in Morton, Illinois. I am sure if you contacted them and said you wanted some gray wool, you wanted an assortment, they would put it together for you. Of course, excuse me, I swallowed funny. It's easier to buy it in person. And I would say that what I need to do now is buy some solids. I'm always attracted to plaids and some of those, I mean, they're great. Like in the middle of this, I used a plaid and then layered the pennies, or is what they call those round ones, on top of it. And I liked it a lot. But when I went to do some of the other things, I just didn't want to use as much pattern things. So I'm going to get some, not only solids, but get some more creams and grays and that kind of thing. So I would, those are two sources. And then related to that, someone asked, that was, okay, then Clap Cats said, terrific episode. I learned so much. Our first grandchild arrived in April, and you both have inspired me with your knitted sweater pattern, pillowcases, quilts, and woodland animals. Thank you. One question. The woodland animals look like they are made of scrap wool. Are they? And if so, how did you keep it from fraying? wool felt or wool doesn't fray very easily. And I believe most of this is slightly felted. And if you buy felt, if you bought it in a retail store, you could slightly felt it in a sink to make it a little less likely to fray. The wool labels that I made for the sweaters, I just used it, I just cut it and did not do anything. Now there's blanket stitch around there, and blanket stitch by its very nature will help any kind of frame, but you don't really have to worry about it with wool felt or a good sturdy wool. My sister gave me a birthday coming up. She gave me these wool, so they're specifically for wool. They're like a real tiny sawtooth edge scissors, and I haven't used them yet, but I'm looking forward to using those, and after I use them I'll talk to you about them a little bit. Hope that we answered that. And then an idea from Little Dollhouse. She said, those little felt animals are so cute. I would make a wall hanging quilt and place them on with Velcro. Children love to play with that. That was a great idea. I thought, yeah, I could see doing that, having a wall hanging, and they could maybe a woodland thing, and they could put their little animals on that. Or it could be on the floor too, as well. And that would be easy to travel with. You could just fold it up. So we'll see. It would have to be wool applique, I think, because I could come up with a design for that. Okay. Pillowcases. My sister showed the pillowcases she made for her grandchildren, and of course I had to hop on board with that because we like to do everything together, or we influence one another. So I had some fabric I had purchased from Fabric Worm. They have the most beautiful fabrics, but this was not really great for quilting. It was 100% organic cotton. It was from Japan, and it had a beautiful woodland scene with children playing and foxes and squirrels and little animals. It's just gorgeous. And I decided that because I probably wouldn't use it for quilting, I would make a pillowcase out of it. Now, I've already given those to the girls because I did when we went to the lake house. And I bought toddler-sized pillows at Joann Fabric, but I also looked at them on Amazon. I think Gayle said she got hers on Amazon. I got them at Joann Fabrics and used a coupon, but I think it ended up being about the same as ordering on Amazon. So I then ordered more fabric because I saw some other fabric by the same company that would be perfect for the, I don't know what you call it, like the cuff or the border of the pillow. And then I ordered some red to go as piping, and they turned out really cute. It's a fun project. I looked at several videos. Melanie Ham, I think, is the one my sister mentioned. She has a great YouTube channel for quilting and sewing. And then I watched Jenny Doan's, and then I found one. I looked at so many, and if I had recorded this episode earlier, I probably would have remembered a little bit more, but they're fairly simple to make. I will say that mine was a directional fabric that made it a little harder. So when you make your first ones, you might want to get a non-directional, so you don't have to worry about which way everything is going. So I had fun with that, and I'll probably make more. So pillowcase is really a good project, a great easy project, and they're so practical and useful. Then Gayle's I Spy quilt. A lot of people love the idea. Those are half square triangles all sewn together. And I found in one of my quilting books, if you need a pattern for it, in 3 Times the Charm. It's a Leisure Art series. Here it is. 3 Times the Charm. This is book 2. Hannah. Hannah is basically all half square triangles. And this would be too small. So you'd probably need to, see, the finished measurement is 25 by 28. You'd probably have to do multiplied by 4, I would imagine, because if you want it for a toddler, yeah, you'd need at least close to that, 3.5 times maybe for the fabric and everything. This uses charm packs, but if you need a pattern, this would be a good one to go with. And if you're doing half square triangles, you have to get block lock. They're little things. They make it incredibly easier. And I'll talk more about that. I may do a separate episode on the block lock and wing clipper too, because there's so much to say about it, and I have my opinions. Then Gayle also had her, she called it floating blocks, but it was a class that she took, so she didn't have. I found this in Jelly Roll Quilts by Pam and Nikki Lintott. There's one in here called Pandora's Box. It's on page 44, 45. And that is basically the same pattern that Gayle had. This is the book that when they say it uses a jelly roll, it uses up the whole jelly roll. I don't know how they do it, but it's amazing. You don't have much left over. So I generally will pull in a couple of extra fabrics just to kind of mix it up a little bit. I love jelly rolls, but sometimes, I don't know, I just like to shake it up a tad. So that is Jelly Roll Quilts by, it says, the perfect guide to making the most of the latest. I've made, you can see I have a lot of tabs on this, and I made at least 3 quilts out of that book. I have their other books as well. Okay, a couple other small projects. I made some cloth books for the girls. I don't have them. I already gave them to them, but one of them, both of these were kits I bought at Peddler's Way, and it comes all printed, and I thought, oh, that'll take about an hour. No. The first one, which was the elephant book, this is just part of the fabric. It's not, obviously not the book. They were, I don't know, like 6, 8 inches square. And the elephant one had little legs sticking out. And then the other one was a Thanksgiving one. So I made them for the girls, and this one took about 4 hours. It took all of a Saturday morning. But the second one I was a little quicker on. I didn't do it right afterwards, but it was a little quicker, partly because I learned in the first one, they didn't tell you all the pieces you had to cut of batting ahead of time. And that was kind of annoying because I got going on it and then I have to go back and cut batting. So on the second one, I knew to read ahead and see how many pieces and sizes of batting so that they would be ready and I didn't have to stop and cut. So those were fun, but I don't even know the company that makes these. Let's see, A Huggable and Lovable Book by Sandra something for Studio E, maybe, if you want one. This one, I could hardly read it without getting choked up. It was the sweetest thing, and I just really loved it. When Gayle was here, we went to the quilt show. I bought a tool called a clapper. It looks like this. This is a tailoring tool. It has a little groove along here. Kind of reminds me of what my mom used to use for ironing to get sleeves and things like that, but hers was a little taller than this. I had read about this as a tool for quilting, and what it does is it makes your seams flatter and tighter, which, because I really love especially miniature quilts and where it has to be so precise, I thought this would really help. I think I paid about $25 for it. I don't even think you'd need anything fancy. You could actually just use a piece of a 2x4 as long as it was clean and didn't have any sap on it. But I bought it from a gentleman who makes a lot of wood things, and I saw him at another quilt show when I went to the one in Galesburg or Knoxville with my friend Karen. So I decided to pick this up, and I've really enjoyed using it. I don't use it on every seam, but when I have one that is a little stubborn, I use it. And what you do is after you press the seam and then spray it with either water or starch, you put this down on the seam and put a little pressure on it and leave it there for a few seconds and then take it up. And what it does, the wood is unfinished. It actually absorbs some of that moisture, and then that makes the seam lie flatter. you can go on Etsy, and there are lots of people that sell these, and actually some of them were a little less than this, but by the time you'd add shipping in, it wouldn't make any difference. And I like to buy local, so I'm happy to pay him to make them. And if you live in the area, I could probably find who that is. But you could just look for him at a quilt show in the area if you're, I don't think too many people that live in the area actually watch the show, but who knows. So yeah, we bought some fabric. I've already put that in my, oh, I forgot to tell you at the end of the episode, when we went in September, when we went to, well, we got as far as St. Louis when we were supposed to go, and then Hurricane Florence wrecked our vacation plans. We went over to my sister's in St. Louis and her husband, and we went out to lunch. We made a day of it because we were so disappointed, my husband and I and my mom, that we needed something to do. So they were very gracious, we all went out to lunch, and then Mom and Gayle and I went shopping, did a little retail therapy and all. And then I photographed my sister's quilting space. Now, if you saw the last episode, you know she is an organization genius. And I loved touring her quilting room, and I recorded it. So that will probably be at the end of this episode. I'll put that little one in. That'll be fun for you to see. So in other things, I finished all of my blocks for my maker's quilt. There's now a block for every major quilt, not major, but even baby quilts. Most of them are represented on here, so I'm going to show those to you. Some of them aren't squared off entirely, but that's okay. This is a baby quilt that I made for my great nephew that's the organic fabric, and I embroidered his name and his birth on there. And for his older brother, I wasn't a quilter then, so I had knitted for him, but he was, I think, 3 when his brother was born, and I made him a quilt with the same fabrics. And this has his name and the year, how old he was when I gave him that quilt. Now on these, I used the Quilt As You Go method in Jira Brandvig's book, Quilt As You Go, Made Modern. This is what I made for, I made some potholed, actually just mats for my daughter-in-law for her birthday using batik. Here's one of them. That's not one of the quilt blocks. I don't know how that got in there. I kind of even forgot I made it. This was the first quilt I made in my new era of quilting. Previous to that, I only made 4 quilts. 2 in the early 80s, and then 2 in like 2010. And then when I started in 2015, it was when our granddaughter was born, and this was the baby quilt. This represents the baby quilt I made for her, and has her birth date and her full name on it. And then for the second granddaughter, I did a different pattern. I think it's in that, maybe in that book I just showed you, one of the 3 Times Your Charm. There are 3 volumes on that. And on this one, I did a, what do you call it, on point block in the middle, and then embroidered her birth information on that. And I just use, on the embroidery, I just use a simple back stitch. I think it's just the easiest and looks the best. When my sister was here, we did some hand piecing using the paper template thing for the grandmother's garden. Neither of us liked it, but I will tell you, if you decide to do it, do not glue them to the cardboard, because that was terrible. When I finally got onto it, is after my sister left. She did hers, and I think she did mine too, but then I did it for something else. I don't know. But anyway, the glue does not work. If you see a tutorial that says glue it, don't. Just baste it around. That is by far simpler, but neither of us really love the process. I have a needle book that I use quite a bit. My sister liked it. So when we got done with, I think these were supposed to be, like, I was thinking of using it for the mug rug for Maine. They were supposed to be a mat. But I said, well, why don't we use your grandmother's flower garden piece and make you a needle book? We should have recorded that or tried to, but we didn't. So we each had our little piece. I decided to just put it in here, and then I embroidered Sisters August 2018 in red embroidery. It doesn't show up real well, but that's okay. So it's just another block in my maker's quilt. Then this one represents 2 quilts actually for babies, Carl and Izzy. I use the same pattern for them. I made one of them bigger, but made that. And then this one represents all the placemats that I made. These were the leftovers from the placemats. I think I used every scrap. I made that. I've shown it on video before. I did a Jelly Roll Race quilt and then cut it up and made placemats out of it. This says 10 mini quilts. I used blocks from various mini quilts that I've made. I made 10 mini quilts a year ago or so, a little over a year ago, summer 2017 and into the fall, and I can hardly wait to get back to them. So that's the block for the mini quilts. It just has leftovers from those quilts. And then this one is for Winnie. I made it for her 1-year birthday. And that's baby quilt or toddler quilt. And then this I made for myself. It was my first quilt using the quilt as you go method, and all the blocks were basically different, and I used scraps of 1930s reproductions. And then this one represents the grandmother's fan that I finished in June. And those are leftovers from that because I used the stripy binding on that. And I did a little extra embroidery. I don't know if you can see it there. You can see it. I think that's called feather stitch. You know, when I hold this up in front of my face, you can't really hear me as well. But it's feather stitch. I did a running stitch and put the date in there. I'm all caught up. And I think I have about 30, close to 30 blocks now. So it probably would be enough. But if I need more, I have plenty of scraps. I can make a couple extras. I had originally said I wanted to incorporate my knitting with this, but I think I can't go backwards on that. When I finish this one, then future ones I might somehow incorporate my knitting by embroidery or something. Oh, yeah, I brought this. Back in the 80s, I made 2 quilts in the early 80s before rotary cutters or anything. I don't know what happened to them. I have neither of them, but one of them, I couldn't believe this. I might put this in. Apparently I was going to make a pillow. So I took the extra blocks and I did a little hand quilting. I know I'm not going to put this in the quilt because it's pretty bad. And I think, yeah, I just gave up on it. But anyway, I did a 9 patch with I don't even know why I still have it, but I just thought I'd show it to you. Okay, now my current project. Oh my goodness, I have had so much fun with this. Back in January or somewhere around that time, I showed you a box of beautiful fabric that was sent to me by Jean. And I called this my Smithsonian quilt because the fabrics were authentic reproductions based on real fabric, and they were from kits. I believe Jean told me kits: Groom's Quilt, Rising Sun, and Little Sisters, which Jean made or something like them. So she sent me the leftovers, and it was like Christmas, opening that up, even better than that. So I got to it and I started making it. I wanted a quilt with bigger blocks that would really show off the fabrics. And I used almost all of them, except for a couple of them that were very light and there wasn't enough contrast with them and the background. So let me show it to you and then I'll talk about it a little bit. Now this is just the top. I have not, it needs a little trimming and ironing, but other than that, the top is done. And while I have this up, just note this square here, or these squares. There's, I don't know, 30 some of them. So the way I did it was, after consulting with Jackie at Peddler's Way Quilt Company, she suggested that I use something. Well, I have this book, the Quilter's Reference Tool, and a block like, they call this one sawtooth block. Something like sawtooth block, or Ohio, I think it's called sawtooth block in here. I used this and Quilt As You Go made vintage. The block I made is actually in here, and she does not call it anything, but I think it is Sawtooth Star in the other one. So here it is in Quilt As You Go made vintage by Jira Brandvig. That's the one I picked out because the blocks have a big center square, and then they have these points around. To make the points, you use they're flying geese to make those sections. Now, back in the dark ages, the very first quilt I made was not that one I just showed you that was a 9-patch. It was actually a flying geese. All of it was a flying geese, like columns of flying geese. All I had was a piece of cardboard and a Dover publication that I made that. I don't know how I did it, because flying geese are hard. They're hard to get them right. So consequently, when I started making the first blocks, they were terrible. I just thought, I can't do this. They're just not good. So I got online to find out more, and it turns out that there are two products, Block Lock that I mentioned earlier, and Wing Clipper. I recommend both of these. Wing Clipper had instructions. I'd also seen these online, but they weren't as good as Wing Clipper. They have instructions where you can make 4 flying geese units in one, at a time. You make those together. That alone is great. But then when you trim it using Wing Clipper, it's even better. So this is only about $17, and it has bunches of sizes on it. And then Block Lock makes a tool, and like I said, I might do a separate thing on this, but just in case, just in case I don't get to it. The difference here with Block Lock is you have to buy the size, the one size that you're going to use. Wing Clipper has a whole bunch of sizes on it. I can't remember how many. It goes all the way from a 1.5 inch to a 10.5 inch, which is quite large. And then this one, the Block Lock, you have to have the size, the exact size. And these rulers are not cheap. However, trimming it with Block Lock is so quick. And there are loads of videos on that too. But this whole chart tells you what size you need to cut in order to make it. Wing Clipper has a chart too. So my goal is to get all the Block Lock for the half square triangle, the flying geese. I probably wouldn't buy all of the flying geese ones. I don't know if I'm going to be making that many with flying geese, but I have bought some. And Peddler's Way Quilt Company, if you live in the area, they're having their big birthday sale this weekend. It's December 1st and 2nd, 25% off almost everything in the shop. But let me get to those rulers first before you go buy them. Just kidding, of course. But anyway, if you live in the area, you probably know about that anyway. It'd be worth a trip because it is a fabulous quilt shop. Okay, let's see. I will talk more about the Smithsonian quilt when I get it to Nancy and it's finished. I have beautiful backing that was in the box as well. And I think I'm going to use, I think I have enough of one of the fabrics to make the binding. And I've had a blast with it. I have enjoyed every bit of it. So, oh goodness. Yeah, I'm almost at an hour now. So that, let me just look through my notes here and see. Oh yes, yes. The blue painter's tape. This is my tip for you. my tip is buy or steal from your husband or a partner, whatever, a roll of blue painter's tape. It's so inexpensive. I've used it in so many ways. When I make the wool labels, I used it to make a straight line. One bad thing about working with the wool felt is it's very hard to mark it. A hair marker doesn't work. A white chalk kind of works, but I just used the tape for the bottom line and then the top line, and that way it ended up being pretty straight on there. But my best tip for the blue tape, and it's not original to me, but put it, you know, where your sewing machine plate that's on the table, that it has a little rise, a little lip there, and your seams underneath can flip because of that. And you're constantly trying. I still ended up with some flip, but you can put that blue painter's tape across that and don't push it in the ridge, just smooth as you can. And then when your fabric goes up over that, it doesn't flip as often. I mean, it improved it by 95%. I still have a few flips, but maybe I just need to replace the tape, and it's super simple. When you're going to change the bobbin to rip off the tape, it's no big deal. That has just made a huge difference. My sister said the same thing. She tried it. I showed her that tip, and she said it was a really good tip for her too. One more tip that Gayle really liked was that you can, if you have a book, like I should do it with my Quilt As You Go books, you can take your book to an office supply store or printing company like Office Depot or Kinko's in the US, and they can spiral bound or spiral bind a book for you. So they cut off this. Now, they can do most of them. They cut off the binding, and then they can do it while you wait, and it's about $5. So if there's a book that you use a lot, you might consider doing that. After I told Gayle that, as soon as she got home, she was straight to Office Depot and had it done. So I think that's it. If I've forgotten anything, that's okay. You can't, when there's this much stuff, I can't get everything in, but I have shown quite a bit, and I thank you so much for joining me. There will be some photos here at the end and my sister's video showing her quilting studio or quilting area. And yeah, if you have questions or comments, we love them down below, and I will try to stay on top of those for the next episode and not fall behind. Again, you can find me on Ravelry as PrairiePiper. I'm on Quilt Swag too. If you don't know about Quilt Swag, it's a beginning, it's like Ravelry only for quilters, and it's just getting started. I think they're in their beta testing phase. So I'm knitting pipeline on Quilt Swag, and you can friend me there, although I forget to go in there. I'm just so used to going onto Ravelry, but I need to do that. That would be good. So have a great week. Hey, Steve, back and hold your knitting and your quilting and your wool applique close. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the experience that my sister and I have had sewing hexagons into oops, I see now I've got this one in the wrong place. It's supposed to be over here. But anyway, we'll talk about it anyway. The tutorial we looked at talked about, or said you could either glue the hexagons to the back. Here's one that's still glued on these edges. Or you could stitch around, as I've done here. Gayle and I both found that stitching these on, I'm going to go ahead and snip this off. I started it, but it's not going to, I'm not going to go there. We started out gluing them, and Gayle did hers first because I was doing some other things, and she said it was really hard to sew them because I'm just knotting this thread. So this needs to go here, and I'm going to stitch across here. And when this was glued, we may have just put in too much glue, but it was really hard to get this in there without grabbing the paper, which is cardstock. So you just have to get a couple of threads and get it through like that. I did one side that was glued, and it was so frustrating that I took all the glue, I just picked it up and then sewed all of them, because at least the sides that I needed to stitch on, I'm probably taking too big of steps, but you see how you have to pick up here. I didn't get the second fabric there without catching the cardboard, and you can't just get one thread or it's not going to hold. So my idea is that if you stitch this around, then you have, it's not so tight for one thing. Also, I would say the tutorial said 1/4 of an inch. I would cut at least, maybe not 1/2 an inch, but a little closer to 1/2 an inch, because some of these are very tight to get across, and maybe we just weren't eyeballing it very well. So those are my 2 suggestions if you want to try making one of these. This isn't my thing. Gayle didn't really enjoy it either, but I think I learned something from it, and those would be the 2 main things. That I would not glue it, I would stitch it around. It didn't take that much time. Here's one that I tried. I stitched, and it was so, you can see it, there really isn't much. I think I took a little more there. There really isn't much there, so I kind of stitched across here, because this stitching is going to be taken out. This black here will be taken out as well. I hope that helps somebody somewhere along the line. I finished making my one, and probably my only in my lifetime, grandmother's garden piece here. But I want to show you how the clapper works. I think that's what it's called. I just recently heard about this, and then I bought one at the quilt show. So you spray with water or starch. I've already done this once. And then press it as you normally would. And then, this is a tailor's tool, by the way, and then you press this on it. Like so, and it makes a sharper seam. I think this does really make a difference. What it looks like. This, I guess, is, these little grooves are for your hand, I guess. Now we're going to go in the actual sewing room here. Here's her fabric, her block magazines, the charm packs, jelly rolls, back quarters, books on the bottom. And then we're going to go over to you have your cutting table and your special lamp. And Gayle, you want to show over there your dresser? You go over there first. Okay. Well, let me do this first. Your rulers in a ruler holder here that we got at the quilt show, and then her tray with, let's see, you have your clips, your thimble. What else? Your pin cushions. What's this for? These for?
Those I label my rows when I embroidered these. Label my rows when I'm laying them out so that I'll know which direction to press them and which row they are.
Nice. And then your fun
These are
hedgehog.
the labels that
Oh,
I
yeah.
have my grandma name and my regular name.
Your thread display and then your
My sewing basket.
Now let's look in these drawers.
This is extra fabric.
What's in that Starbucks? Oh, what are those Q-tips for?
These is the class I took on my machine is to, when you take your bobbin out, you clean all that fuzz out with Q-tips. And they recommend like not the Q-tip brand, a cheap brand that won't make more fuzz.
Okay, and then what's in your Starbucks cup?
This is if I have a broken needle or a dull needle, I just drop it through the thing, and then when I change my rotary blades, I just drop them in there so they don't go in my garbage and cut myself. That's the nurse in me.
Yeah.
I get rid of my sharps properly.
What's in that? Oh, your iron cleaner?
Yeah, my iron cleaner.
All right, I think we got this drawer. Larger pieces of fabric, in other words.
Yeah, and this is like kind of smaller pieces and
blocks you've made.
Yeah, from previous quilts.
That's a good idea to keep all those blocks in the same place.
Yeah.
Partial charm packs.
Left over from.
Okay. What do you have? What's that?
This is leftovers from a Christmas quilt that I'm going to make a table runner from.
Oh, okay. All right. Now what?
Well, the bottom drawer is just like extra batting and some extra yardage and stuff. Extra rulers. This is my sewing machine cover that I love. This is from Etsy.
Oh, nice.
I ordered that. Quilted kind of.
We kind of skipped over the machine. The machine's right in front of the window here. She has it on a table that can be folded up. And then next to the machine, you have your magnetic pins, pin cushion, pens, and scissors. What's this? Just practice, just if you need to try out.
My little, and my calculator for doing all my
little notebook.
Yeah.
Nice. And then just so they get I'm going to show the rest of the room. So it's a guest bedroom. So she can use the bed for design, putting your stuff out. And then what about the closet over there?
Yeah.
We don't want to be in it today.
These are all my projects.
Okay. She keeps her projects in these bins. You got it, Target?
Yeah. I think they were in the dollar bin, but they were like $3 each. So there's like a quilt in each bin.
So each bin has a separate project in it. And then you could hang stuff here.
I know.
And then you still have stuff back there.
Yeah, that's my sewing machine case if I go to a class.
Yeah, cool.
So yeah.
Okay, that's pretty. That's a great setup. I got a bunch of ideas.